Hello, my name is Mark Johnson and I am a California Superior Court judge. For 7 years, I have had the privilege of presiding over the Riverside County Veterans Treatment Court. In this position, I've been on the front lines of the fight to heal our American veterans of trauma they've suffered while in uniform. This is trauma inflicted by foreign enemies and, sadly, also trauma inflicted by our own military personnel. We serve justice-involved veterans who are facing criminal charges. We are here to discuss something we witness in our courtroom, but let me first describe our court. A Veterans Treatment Court is a collaborative court. It's a treatment court, hence the name. I chair a team of attorneys and mental health professionals whose sole mission is to work together, or collaboratively, to heal veterans suffering from the invisible wounds of military service. Most of these wounds are the result of horrible things that they've witnessed or experienced in combat. The wounds are mental, emotional. I'm responsible for making the final decision on what treatment the veteran will receive and ensuring that veteran gets that treatment. I was selected for this position because I'm a retired colonel of the United States Army. I spent 28 years in the active and reserve armies, including a year in Baghdad, Iraq. Now, I didn't mention probably the most important member of our team to heal our veterans, our mentors. And with me is retired Army Command Sergeant Major Gregory Coker. He oversees our mentor program.
I am Greg Coker, Mentor Coordinator for Riverside and San Bernardino County's Veterans Treatment Court. I served 26 years in the United States Army, 2 tours in Iraq, and received a Bronze Star. The mentor program is an essential part of the veteran's recovery and transition back into society as a successful citizen. The mentor's role is to engage, impact, and empower veterans. Mentors are knowledgeable veterans who listen, guide, and are friends, battle buddies. Mentors volunteer to help their veteran brothers and sisters in need. Mentors understand the challenges facing our women veterans. I am here to shed light on a topic too few people are aware of. In April of this year, a 20-year-old U.S. Army soldier went missing at Fort Hood, Texas. Her name was Private First Class Vanessa Guillen. Shortly before she disappeared, Vanessa told her parents that she was being sexually harassed by soldiers in her unit. 2 months later, her remains were found by a construction crew. Specialist Aaron Robinson, a soldier in her unit, confessed to a civilian that he had beaten Vanessa to death with a hammer inside the unit's armory. Vanessa's murder is a classic case of military sexual trauma. It was a breaking point with many Americans. It was a breaking point of Congress discussed with a military that cannot get a handle on a serious issue. As Jane Harmon, a 9-time congressional representative from California, has said, a female soldier in Iraq is more likely to be raped by a fellow soldier than killed by enemy fire. Too many of our sisters in arms are being mistreated, often sexually, and our military is not doing enough to protect them. And the problem is compounded because a few women who do choose to speak up, more than likely their complaints discounted or dismissed. These ladies took the same oath as their male counterparts. They swore to fight and protect the nation to the point of giving their lives if necessary. Yet, they, victims, are suffering trauma at the hands of their military comrades.
We're not actually here to suggest fixes to the active military. That is, we have absolutely no control over that. But we can treat the trauma suffered by our women veterans and criminal behavior that results from that trauma. So, why are we, 2 males, discussing this issue? You know, I thought at first that we shouldn't, that a woman should present this talk. that the two of us weren't the right speakers because we're men. But in fact, we must speak. Males preside over 2/3 of the courtrooms in this country. This is a serious problem. If we don't speak, who will?
Women are assuming an ever-larger role in our nation's defense. At the same time, the overall size of the military is shrinking. Let's talk about the changing face of our military. In 1970, during the Vietnam War, there were 3 million Americans on active duty. Women were approximately 1.5% of our active duty personnel, or around 40,000. By 1980, the active duty military had shrunk to 2 million troops. Yet, during that same period, the percentage of women service on active duty increased to 9% of the active duty, or roughly 180,000. As of today, 1,350,000 serve on active duty in the military, the significant reduction since Vietnam. The percentage of women has risen to 18%. 250,000 women serve on active duty. 10% of the American veterans, or around 2 million veterans, are women. That percentage will increase over the coming decades. Yet, despite these dramatic increases, many people do not associate women with being veterans. The veteran stereotype exists that soldiers and veterans are men.
Veterans treatment courts, like ours, exist to meet the unique needs of veterans. But what this stereotyping translates to in practice is that women veterans are being missed for treatment that could be individually tailored to address mental health and physical conditions resulting from their service. Law enforcement and jailers do not ask women upon arrest if they've served in the military. Judges and attorneys often don't ask either. So that brings us to the first area we need to address to help our women veterans in the criminal justice system, identifying them as veterans. We don't ask, are you a veteran? Some people may not believe they are veterans, and it could be because they didn't serve in combat or they have a bad discharge. You should ask one simple question: have you ever served in the military?
Once we identify our veterans, assessment of a veteran is critical to developing a treatment plan. Let's talk about 3 most common diagnoses women suffer from as a result of their military service: depression, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder. The most common of these is PTSD. Studies have found that anywhere from 9 to 30% of combat veterans are affected by PTSD. Normal to veterans with PTSD is seeing terrifying images that are not theirs. Veterans' relationships, employment, and health fall apart. To alleviate these symptoms, veterans often turn to alcohol, methamphetamines, and other drugs. These short-term solutions do not work and often land them in court.
But these PTSD numbers become significantly skewed upwards when we look only at our women veterans. Statistically, women suffer from PTSD related to combat about the same as our male veterans. But factoring in the issue of military sexual trauma, the levels of women veterans suffering from PTSD is far higher. The level of PTSD among women veterans of military sexual trauma is as high as 60%. Let me repeat that, 60%. Military sexual trauma is the term used by the VA, the Veterans Administration, to refer to experiences of sexual assault or repeated threatening sexual harassment that a veteran experienced during military service.
Sexual violence against women is pervasive in our military, despite the efforts of the Department of Defense to fight the problem. Take a look at this chart. While military sexual trauma comprise both of sexual assault and severe sexual harassment, these statistics are purely for sexual assault and does not include sexual harassment aspects. The numbers are rising. The blue column represents actual reports of sexual assault. But given 2/3 of the victims do not report, to the DOD's estimate is much higher. That is the orange column. Since 2016, the rates are increasing dramatically. After they leave active duty, 25% of the women seeking treatment at the VA state that they were victims of sexual trauma, 1 in 4.
A woman I will refer to as Carla, and that's not her real name, once stood before me charged with felony thefts. Inspired by her father, she had enlisted in the Army at age 18. She was 19 when 3 men in her military police unit raped her. She reported it to her commander, but he believed the males, who claimed it was a consensual 3-on-1 orgy. Ostracized, she began drinking heavily to relieve her depression. Her job performance fell. 8 months later, she was discharged. Standing before me in court, Carla looked tired and beaten. She looked older than her age of 35 years. Bitter from her military experience, she had turned to methamphetamine after leaving service, which is a common form of self-medication for people suffering from PTSD. I placed her on probation, where she was treated for depression, PTSD, and military sexual trauma. About 5 to 10% of the veteran defendants in my court at any given time are women. But based on my experience, the absolute vast majority of these women have been the victims of military sexual harassment. It's close to 100%.
This brings us to our next point. All veterans should be screened for a history of sexual harassment and assault or military sexual trauma. How do we screen? The simple answer is to ask, but the discussion must be completed in a supportive environment. Women who was raped on active duty, who is depressed, anxious, and cannot stop using drugs, who views herself as a failure, is not going to suddenly open up and tell anything to a guy in a black robe in a crowded courtroom. The screening for sexual military trauma should be approached with a female therapist in a compassionate and sensitive manner.
I think it's really important as well how judges approach the people that stand before them, the veterans. In our court, we don't label veterans as criminals or losers. We view their crimes as health problems. I tell the veterans before me that when I look at them, I see heroes who've stumbled, brothers and sisters in arms who need help. If a veteran requests treatment for military sexual trauma, we provide it. Our services are based on substantial research about what helps sexual trauma survivors recover. Women therapists generally provide the treatment to other women, and I strongly recommend that. This is tough therapy. It depends on being able to relive, to talk about what actually happened in probably one of the most traumatic times in a person's life. But despite its devastating impact, it is possible for those who experience military sexual trauma to heal. The treatment works, resulting in a significant reduction in PTSD and depression. I remember the last time I talked to Carla, she was 18 months clean and sober. She laughed and smiled, but she always just seemed a little sad to me.
We love this country. We are proud to serve this nation. We are grateful to continue in the service of our fellow veterans. Yet, the plight of our sister veterans is unacceptable. We are doing what we can to help our female veterans heal. Critical to that effort is our Veterans Court.
So we hope you got something out of this. Our theme today was awareness of this issue. You may not have known that women are a significant portion of our military. Now you are. You may not have known that a Veterans Treatment Court exists. Now you are aware. And you may not have known that military sexual trauma affects 1/4 of female veterans. And that I sincerely hope you are aware and could take that away from watching this. With this awareness comes the opportunity for healing. Healing for those who've been traumatized in unimaginable ways. Help us spread this awareness, and with that, help us spread healing. Thank you.
Thank you.